How much customer traction do you all have?
We had just barely hit 10K MRR. There were some companies in our batch with at least revenue-wise zero traction, right? Zero revenue. Even a couple companies that are getting in purely on concept idea. There were several companies that wrote the first lines of code during the batch, like after starting.
So about a year ago, I made a video called What is Y Combinator?
So what exactly is Y Combinator? Well, the answer is a number of things.
And much to my surprise, startup founders started watching that video before they applied to YC. Enter Kalmana. Kalmana just got into Y Combinator with his startup called Pickle.
Pickle is software that helps companies understand every phone and video conversation they have with their customers. So we're taking call recordings, automatically transcribing, and then extracting key insights, questions, and trends. The big vision, we really want to help companies understand their customers better.
I saw his post about getting into Y Combinator on LinkedIn, and I reached out and he told me he knew who I was. He had watched my video before. And so I asked him if he would be willing to share some of his experience in the application and interview stages that ultimately got his startup into the current Y Combinator batch.
We're excited. We're in the current batch. It's winter 2021. You get into YC and you do YC. If you get into others, it's very much dependent on the situation, where you're at. They'll invest a little bit of money. Most any accelerator will. So you take that into consideration. But for the most part, it's really expensive money, right? Like the investment to the equity is really expensive. Where you kind of have to evaluate if it's the right thing for your business at that time. But for the most part, Y Combinator YC is a yes.
I think of YC in 4 different stages. There's the application process when you're just getting started. You might do that one multiple times. There's the interview stage. Essentially, that's when Y Combinator calls you back for more information. If you get accepted, you have the batch that you're in, and then life after Y Combinator. You're now a YC company. Most companies, and my own companies included, will never make it past the application step, the first one. And even fewer, about 1%, will make it past the interview stage. So I really wanted to make a video that focuses on these 2 steps. How do you apply for Y Combinator and how do you get in? And it starts with a reality check. Let's be real here. Is your company a venture fundable company?
YC definitely has a mold, right? Just like any other VC firm or any other investor, they very much have a mold. So they're not looking for lifestyle businesses. They want businesses that have the potential to be big. You have to have a big market. Like, you don't have to be full time, but that makes a huge difference, where it shows kind of the dedication to what you're building, and like that you're ready to jump in and do this. You've already kind of made other sacrifices, stop taking a paycheck, and set up kind of the rest of your life to be able to dedicate this to your company. So they definitely have a mold. It's important to kind of research and understand, is your startup a VC fundable startup, right? But if you meet that, then if we can, you can.
If your company isn't a venture fundable company, that's totally okay, by the way. There's so many companies and brands that are doing wildly great things, making wonderful products that help people, employing lots of folks, pushing their industries forward. Just because you're not venture fundable doesn't make you any less of a founder. And by the way, there's a lot of companies out there that are actually venture fundable, but just don't appear to be venture fundable. I think of a company like Dude Wipes, for example. Who knew that the wet wipe market was ripe for disruption, and that there was going to be this new big entry into that market? Certainly not some pointed hair venture capitalist in an office somewhere, but they still went out and got the job done and became one of the big players in that industry.
Now that's fresh.
It was probably hard to raise money for this, because people probably didn't believe Dude Wipes when they said, no, we're going to make it. That might be your company. So just because YC tells you no doesn't mean you're on the wrong track. stay on the track that you're on if you believe in it.
It was exciting. It was crazy. It's kind of a process, right? Where you'll do the application. Some people spend a lot of time on the application. We did. Some people go through it really fast. So, you go through the whole application process, you wait, you get, excited when you hear back for the interview, and you wait a little bit more, you do so it's, kind of a process, but super exciting to get in. We looked at a couple other accelerators, ended up getting into a couple others, and it got into Y Combinator, and that was kind of the dream. So that kind of brings us to here.
The application process itself for Y Combinator, it takes a little while, but it doesn't take too long. The application has all very relevant questions on it, and you might have to go back to it a few times to get all the answers, but overall it's somewhere between 2 and 4 hours of input to get this thing done and submitted. Keep in mind, if you're submitting every single batch, then you only have to do it twice a year. So it's well worth the 4 hours it takes. Also, make sure that you read the rules for the pitch video before you shoot it, and the quality of your pitch video, I promise you, does not vary your chance of getting in. A lot of companies that have been accepted into Y Combinator have since publicly released their pitch videos on YouTube, and you can see that the companies making it in are not companies that are doing anything that's high production. It's always just a quick introduction, hold your phone up. These are the founders. This is what we're doing. Super simple video.
Hi, I'm Parker Conrad. I'm founder of Zenefits.
Hey everybody, I'm Kamar. I'm a former Google and Apple engineer, now focused on my own startup called Flip.
Hi, Y Combinator. I'm Walker Williams.
And I'm Evan Seitz Clayton.
And we're the co-founders of Teespring.
Hi, I'm Liz.
I'm JJ.
I am the co-founder and CEO of Campus Job.
I'm the co-founder and CTO.
Think of it like it's a vibe check.
Yo, I'm gonna check his vibe. What are you? Yeah, what are you? Bad vibe!
The open application period lasts a couple of months, and you can apply early in that, you can apply towards the end, and your chances of getting in are somewhere near equal. Y Combinator promises that they review every single application that comes in, so it's not a waste of your time. You aren't going to get overlooked. In the case of Pickle, Kalmana applied really early, and he ended up having to wait quite a while to hear back.
We submitted fairly early in the application cycle. I think we submitted at the beginning of August. And then they waited until after the deadline I'd have to look it up, but I want to say we submitted in August. We probably heard about interviews sometime in October, middle of October.
Okay.
And then we scheduled the interview for, it was a week or two after that date. They gave us one day. They said, hey, this is your interview day. What time do you want? So then we chose the time.
Some companies have to apply to Y Combinator year over year for every single batch. I've definitely done that in the past. And you can go from being rejected in years prior to accepted this year for this batch. And usually Y Combinator is looking for something like a product market fit that wasn't happening before, but somehow now is happening. Maybe your company is evolving, or maybe your industry is just becoming more interesting, more trendy. And then there's other companies like Pickle that apply once and get in immediately.
How long have you been working on Pickle before you applied for YC this last time?
We started the company in March of 2020. So
that's fast.
Yeah, so March, and then sent the application in August. What is that, 5 months?
Have you applied in the past for other companies? Has there been other companies that haven't got accepted and Pickle did?
No, only applied once, ever.
Nice.
Even if you don't apply early, let's say you apply right before the deadline, you still have a good chance of getting in. That's exactly why Kalmana and his team had to wait so long to hear back. Y Combinator was waiting for the application deadline to close before they started reaching out. Y Combinator wanted to know exactly all of the companies that had applied so that they could choose the best ones. That being said, YC has been known to allow some late applications to happen, so just because the deadline is passed doesn't mean you can't try to submit your application. It might still get reviewed, and there definitely are companies that have been accepted into YC that applied late, past the due date. So what do you do after you submit your application? Well, my advice to you is forget that you did it and move on to the next task in your startup. Just keep working, keep being heads down. And if you get emails back from YC a month or two later that they are interested in an interview, they want you to book a time, that's great. Congratulations, because a lot of people don't even get that email. But basically, it's nice if you get written back, but please don't rely on it. I also like to, at the time that I've applied, set a reminder 6 months out to reapply. So that just gives you an idea of just how much I'm not planning on getting into the program. I apply, forget about it, and set a reminder to apply again in 6 months. If you are one of the lucky startups that hears back from Y Combinator, then congratulations, that's an achievement. And this is going to be a really good exercise for you to learn how to quickly and succinctly explain your business to someone else. But you're going to need some tips from Kalmana because the interviews at Y Combinator are short. You only get 10 minutes with the YC partners.
So it's a 10-minute interview. A lot of times this is, I've only interviewed once, so this is our one experience. But talking to other people, sometimes partners will be a little bit late, so you're like super stressed out waiting, and then it's a couple 10 minutes after your 10-minute interview.
Y Combinator is not going to be asking you a bunch of trick questions. They're going to be asking you questions about your business, things that you should know the answers to.
A lot of business questions like tell us about your customers, tell us about your revenue and some other metrics related questions, tell us about the space, competitors, but not necessarily trick questions. It's all stuff that you should know if you're if you're like really heads down, like really working on your business. And it's kind of a matter of just being able to reply succinctly and quickly.
And since you only have 10 minutes, you have to be able to answer them quickly. You have to have those answers ready to go, quick fire. Otherwise, you cannot cover enough ground in 10 minutes for anyone to make any type of decision on your business, whether they want to invest or not. You have to be snappy.
I guess that's not a hard rule, right? Sometimes they'll end an interview early. This is, just from talking to other founders. I do think it's probably not a good sign if the interview ends early. Mm-hmm. Probably a good sign if it goes long. Ours was pretty much 10 minutes on the dot with 3 partners. So 3 Y Combinator partners. There's like one partner that will lead, but then everybody will usually ask a couple questions each. Yeah, so you want to stay away from rambling, answer in like 15 seconds, right? So they ask a question, take 15 seconds to answer it well, and then stop. There's a simulator you can Google. I can't remember the URL, but you can Google Paul Graham simulator, or like Paul Graham interview simulator, and basically it'll pop up in an interview question, some example interview questions. Then it gives you 15 seconds to answer before you hit next. If you don't hit next, then like a little fail symbol comes up. So that's a good way to practice like the cadence and moving fast and just taking only 15 seconds and going to the next one.
If you want the honest truth about the startup world, here it comes. Being a startup founder that's looking for investors is a lot like dating. And that's to say that if you really want it too much, if you really, really want investors, people can sniff that a mile away. And it's really off-putting.
I don't think this is the case for everybody, but there are a decent amount of startups where they feel like if they don't get into YC, they're not going to make it. And that's not the truth. And if you feel that way, you're kind of doomed from the start. Like you cannot rely on it, right? You have to know and you have to believe that you will be successful regardless. And when you like really, really believe that you will be successful, whether you get into YC or not, that will help you get into YC. And if you don't believe that, then it's pretty easy to tell. Like you can, they can smell it a mile away, and you're kind of doomed from the start.
I've been guilty of this, so I'm not judging anyone, and I understand why you would want that so bad, because it does mean a lot for many startups. The truth is, a lot of the most investable companies out there are companies that don't need investors, maybe even don't want investors. Or at least they're really good at putting on a face about this. Think of it this way. If an investor believes that your company is going to skyrocket with or without them, they are much, much more likely to make a snap decision about your company to invest right now. And that's true whether you're talking to investors directly or an accelerator like Y Combinator. If you exude that your company is absolutely the shit and it's going to skyrocket, YC is going to want a taste of that.
How much customer traction do you all have?
At that time, now, it's been 6 months and we've grown a good amount, but we had just barely hit 10K MRR when we applied. So yeah, 10K MRR, 120 run rate. There were some companies in our batch with, at least revenue-wise, zero traction, right? Zero revenue. Even a couple companies that are, getting in purely on concept idea. Sometimes they're not first-time founders, so there's some clout there as well, just to the founding team, kind of the founders. But there are several companies that wrote the first lines of code during the batch, like after starting.
Now, on the other side of that, if your company actually really does have legs and it is going to take off and be massive, and you kind of know this at this point, you're naturally going to start asking yourself, why would I ever even worry about getting into YC? Why would I even try? We don't need them. Like, we legit don't need them.
We had talked to some local VC firms here in Salt Lake City, and they had kind of echoed the sentiment of most of the accelerators are probably not worth it for us where we already had some good traction and had a good early customer base, good revenue. But Y Combinator was worth it. So
how come?
Mostly I think for the network, like the network effect of being in Y Combinator. There's a lot of other accelerators and you can get really great coaching and mentorship and a little bit of money. But Y Combinator really, I think does a great job at those things. Maybe it's, arguably the best in the mentorship and coaching as well, but the network effect is by far the strongest.
After talking to Kalmana for a while, I really wanted to understand, what was it about Pickle? Of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies that apply, I think even thousands every single batch, why did Y Combinator pick Pickle? Pick Pickle. Oh man, Kalmana, if you're watching this, buy up pickpickle.com. You need that domain. Anyway, why did Y Combinator pick Pickle?
It's a hard question. And I haven't talked to the founders that interviewed us and asked that specifically. I would love to, actually. At some point, probably not during the batch. Everyone's it's heads and fire. Everyone's kind of busy and crazy. But maybe at some point, years down the road, I'll circle back and be like, hey, do you remember this at all? And what was it?
But after a little bit of encouragement, Kalmana did start to share some tips that really clearly showed why Pickle was considered very seriously by Y Combinator and also ultimately accepted into the program.
We did have some traction, and I think that's important. You stand a much better chance if you have some traction, revenue. We were full-time on the business, and I think that's a big deal as well. It wasn't a side hustle, or we didn't have full-time jobs. This was our full-time job. That helps. And ultimately, I think it's kind of timing where YC as well as us kind of see that conversation intelligence, what we're building is, really a space that's ready to explode.
If you need a quick litmus test on whether your company has a good shot at making it into Y Combinator, here's 3 things that you can ask yourself that will quickly give you an idea. Are you and your co-founders working full-time on your startup? Does your startup have at least a few paying customers? And does your company have the potential to become massive by Silicon Valley standards? So we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars or billions of dollars in valuation. None of these 3 things are hard and fast requirements, but if you're trying to be really real with yourself, is your company right for Y Combinator? Those are 3 really great questions to ask yourself. Now, traditionally, once you got accepted into Y Combinator, they would require you to move to San Francisco for 3 months. And that's since changed with the pandemic, and we don't really know what direction that's going.
For us, it was easier. Birch and I are both married and have 2-year-old little boys, like 2.5. So easier with the family situation where what we would have done is we would have just left our wives and kids in Utah and then moved to San Francisco for 3 months. It would have been awesome. Maybe been like the most productive 3 months of our lives, right? Where you're just, all day, every single minute, hour of the day, you're just focused on your startup. But that's not to discount, like it has been just as productive. It's hard to say, but I think it has been just as productive here, and it's been easier for like the family situation where just personally for us with having wives and kids, we totally would have moved to San Francisco, right? We would have happily found a place and moved out for 3 months. But it definitely did make it easier here, and we're still like probably putting in the same hours as we would if we were there. We live at the office. So.
We really don't know if Y Combinator is going to continue to allow startups to do the program remotely after it's safe, or if they're going to start requiring startups to come to San Francisco again.
Where were you when you got the call that you had been accepted?
We were in the office. It was so we have a little office. We're headquartered in Salt Lake City, and we have a small office space here. We had been emailing one of the kind of the main interview partner, had been asking some questions over email, and so we're kind of like on edge, where like I think we're gonna get either an email rejection or a call acceptance soon. So we were like, it was probably 9:30 or 10 p.m. and we're like hanging out in the office, and we got the call.
How did you celebrate?
That's kind of funny. We didn't really celebrate. I mean, we hoop and holler, like run around the office, screaming, hugging, yelling, that kind of thing. And then it was like right back to work. We sometimes talk about it, how like we never like went to dinner or something like that to celebrate. We just like got back to work.
If people have follow-up questions, where can they reach out to find you?
Yeah, if anybody's interested in just kind of browsing, the website is Pickle.ai.com. So Pickleai.com. And we spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. We try to be really active there. So you can find me on LinkedIn. It's like the company page is just Pickle. And then I'm Kalmana.
I'll link your LinkedIn down below. People, go support this startup.